And welcome to The Last Angry DJ. This is episode number 55. We're so glad to be here. It's such a pleasure to be on the day before St. Paddy's Day. The day after St. Paddy's Day might be a completely different problem. So we're going to keep it where we are right now. And I know earlier Mark had an extraordinarily green jacket on that I think would pull a key across the county if he were to wear it. But he'll be in just a second to say hi. For now, I'm Mitchell K.C. Hill, the radio guy. And this is The Last Angry DJ, as I said. And I'd like to introduce my co-host, my tech expert, and occasional whipping boy. Can you say that? I guess you can't say that anymore. Scapegoat. Can you say that? Is that bad for goats? I don't know. His name is Alex. I almost said Lindsay.
Is it legal to say that as he proceeds to say the word that he or the sentence that
it's called keeping it real? Say. I mean, if I'm gonna screw up, I'm gonna own it. I'm gonna own it. So it's all you, pal.
All good. Good to be here, Mitch, for episode 55 of The Last Angry DJ. Thanks for joining us. This is the show that intersects old media versus new media. We interview luminaries in the world of broadcast and podcast creators, YouTube creators as well. So we are a show that basically discusses all the things in this industry and how it's evolving every single week as things change, and all the challenges and tribulations in both eras or in both worlds, I guess, both broadcast and in the world of podcasts as well. So thanks everyone for being here. We got some people in the live chat. We got I Am Fatness. We got Hershey in there as well. Vintage Nouveau. Great to see you as well. And of course, we have Mark Giuliani, who is a returning guest every single week, an integral part of the show. Good to see you, Mark.
Good to see everyone here. I'm glad to be here. I hope people ask questions this week. I Am Fatness and Hershey. Let's bring on some questions or else I'll be out of a job.
Mark, put that green jacket on.
No.
I like that green. No, God, come on. You can do it.
Happy St. Patrick's Day from Mark O. Giuliani. You see the green frame around me now?
I see it now on Zoom anyhow. But you're half Irish, last I checked.
Yes, I'm half Irish. Mark O. Giuliani. The bottom half
is the bottom half. Okay,
yes.
Very good. Congratulations. Mm-hmm. We'll see that green jacket later. Thank you, Mark. Mark has been very helpful in the last, I guess, last quarter. We've brought him in every show because Mark sort of represents a hard-working independent radio guy that's being hyper-local. So he's very busy getting over the St. Paddy's Day parade that went down just recently. And the other thing I just want to point out is that I know that I occasionally say a bad pronoun or a saying, and Alex is right to call me out on it. I have no idea why that happens. I mean, it just came out of my mouth on it. I know it's bad, but it's like a kind of a comedy Tourette's thing. I just can't help myself. And when I do it, I do have to call attention to it, just to acknowledge that you can't say that word anymore, or you can't do that. You know, that's the world that we live in. So what are you going to do? Alex, is that good enough disclaimer to move forward with today's show?
Absolutely. I think that's all everybody needs, Mitch.
Okay, just a disclaimer. Okay, I apologize in advance for anything I may say that may upset people. And get a shot of Mark there, because he is now transformed into the O. Giuliani mode. There he is. Yeah, he's definitely a Notre Dame. You can tell. Notre Dame. Thank you, Mark. Good to have you here. Good to have the Irish represented. Top of the morning to you. Before we get into the stuff, because this is the Broadcast Boffin's version of the Last Angry DJ, that's where Alex and I and friends talk about stuff. A couple of news items that have popped up. Apparently, Warner Brothers is taking some heat over their DVD collections that they released back in the 80s. And apparently, these DVDs are now suffering from what's called disc rot. So if you have a DVD or a CD, and if you look at it closely, pull it out of the closet and handle it only from the edges and look at it, if it's got that milky buildup around the inside and outside layer, it's completely rendering these DVDs absolutely useless. Alex, what do you hear about that?
Well, it's concerning, but not entirely surprising. You know, I'm a big-time physical media collector. I've mentioned it before in the past on this show. I've mentioned it on other shows as well. And if you didn't know that I collect physical media, now you know, both vinyl and I love physical discs. because I care about picture quality, but I'm not entirely surprised. DVDs are not particularly resilient. So now we're hearing about this with DVDs. I think I still have a collection of some old DVDs now that are mostly unplayable. Especially any disc that is like a rewritable type of disc doesn't last very long. They're not designed to. I mean, these are not designed for long-term archival storage.
Well,
Blu-ray discs are a lot more resilient.
According to Sony, they're supposed to last 100 years. So last I checked, you're not 100 years old.
That's optimistic.
Very optimistic. Okay, so the reports of their death are greatly exaggerated. And what does it look like? What does disc rot look to you? Do you have it on any of your discs?
No, I don't have. I'm guess I'm lucky, maybe because I have such a strictly controlled temperature environment. But no, usually when discs don't play, it's usually because they're scratched. So like some of my music CDs that I still have, and I still have my entire CD collection. Some of them are not very playable because they have a lot of scratches, and I just find that a lot of those types of discs scratch a lot more easily. Blu-rays, I don't know why Blu-rays seem to be more resilient, and maybe somebody in the chat can educate us on why Blu-ray discs are more resilient. Is it the coating? Is it the materials that they're using to print them on? I don't know what it is, but they do seem to be a little more resilient.
Yeah, the problem primarily is I remember going back to my CD days. And there's a good picture that's up there. I don't think we can share it from Mark. Why don't you pop it up there? He's got a picture of what the disc rot looks like. It's the edges when they sandwich. It's pressed together over an aluminum core, and if they don't properly seal the edges, then anything, fungus, among us, or any other like oils from your fingers can get into it. If you're touching the CDs, that can be a problem. So here's the good news from Warner Brothers. Anyhow, if you contact them, and they probably have a number if you search it, they will replace the CD. But here's the funny part: they can't guarantee it'll be the same CD you bought. So they're saying, it might have Bugs Bunny on it, or some great movie, Gone with the Wind, or something like that on. So that's one thing that's in the news. Disc rot coming to a CD or DVD near you. And like Alex, I have a huge CD library, which 2 years ago, I transferred all of the CDs to digital media so it can be stored. But even hard drives are subject to some kinds of degradation over a period of time. So the question is, what is the best kind of media to save your information on? Now, obviously, records, as long as they're handled properly, are going to last a long time. But where do you put it? I mean, if a hard drive goes bad after so many years, is an SSD better? Is some kind of optical media better? I mean, what is your choice?
Well, SSD drives, solid state disks, have their own set of limitations, challenges, problems, and some people prefer spinning disks, especially for archival storage. They're a lot cheaper. And you just have to look at the failure rates. Backblaze is a backup, cloud-based backup company, but they publish every year an amazing drive stats report because they have a big data center. So they actually publish this report showing the failure rates for all these different sized drives, including all the different manufacturers. So you know exactly which ones are more reliable than others. So I think that's really interesting. But look, if you want stuff to be safe, you got to have it backed up in 3 different places, or else you really don't have any kind of backup. You have no recourse. So that's always something to practice, right? So have your cloud-based backup, have your local network attached storage, and then have it in somewhere else. Maybe put a hard drive in a safe, a fireproof safe somewhere. So there's a bunch of things that you can do. But Mitch, on the topic of disk rot, your media is not safe in the digital world as well, because we've heard stories of people buying movies and they think they own them, but ultimately you really don't own anything that's digital. You're ultimately just renting it. You're paying that license
the rights
fee.
to use it.
Now, they may say you own it forever, but for whatever reason, and this has happened, they can pull that license and then that movie's gone, okay? This is why I like physical media. For that reason, is that I can play that movie as long as that disc is in good shape. I can play it anytime that I want. And the other challenge too with digital too is that not every movie, not every TV show is available. right? So there's tons of stuff that is not available, that is only available on physical disc. That is another benefit of having physical media.
You know, it's funny you say that because there's a movie, a science fiction movie, which was so good in its time that I love. It's called This Island Earth. The guy that gets the Tavicron and builds this receiver, it's not available anywhere to download. It is, however, available as a DVD, as a 720 DVD, so it's not that great. But This Island Earth, I would love to be able to download it, but it's like something I haven't seen in a million years, and I'd like to see it. And on the subject of hard drives, I have an old, I guess it's a Generation 6 iPod from Apple. And it's the one that has the 30-pin connector on the bottom of it. And the reason I have it, it's like 125 gigabytes, is because in my car, when the car was built in 2011, that's the only kind of connector that was available. So my Mercedes has a connector, so I can plug my iPod into it and play the music as if it's there. It's starting to skip a little bit, which means that the iPod is getting bad, or the hard drive in it. So I'm open to suggestions. I think there are places now that you can send to have that replaced.
Yeah, absolutely. And those old iPods have those smaller 2.5-inch. I think they originally used Toshiba or IBM. And Mitch, you can open those things up if you're inclined. I mean, of course, you can pay people to do it if you don't want to do it too. But I'm sure you can probably find an iFixit article on how to replace the hard drive in an original iPod and get it working again if you want.
Yeah, I can't do that. Look at my hands. This is me when I'm working on my iPod.
He's exaggerating. He doesn't shake like that.
I know, but still, I have the shakes. You know what's weird? I've always had the shakes. But if I ever have soldering iron in my hand or doing something intricate, as soon as I get close to whatever it's intricate, I completely, it's got to be mental because I completely settle down and stop shaking. It's just a weird little thing. Anyhow, that's what I got to do. I think that what I'm going to do is get some guy on eBay to replace the hard drive in the 30-pin. I guess what's that, a Generation 6 iPod?
30-pin, that's the original connector.
Yeah, the original connector, and replace the drive, but also replace it with an SSD drive instead of a spinny drive. So I hear that's being done. So you don't lose all that. And then as far as the cloud is concerned, you responded to, I have a huge music library. It's like 350 gigabytes of linear PCM WAV files. And I just don't want to put that up on the cloud because two things are going to happen. One is it's going to crush the cloud. It's going to crush my banking account, and I'll add a third. Somebody's going to find it and steal it because having the top 50 songs on Billboard for the last 50 years, that's a pretty serious collection of music. And I've collected it all these years being in the radio business. So we're going to talk more about the music industry in a little bit. We have a few other things to talk about. Smishing. Have you heard this new word referring to unexpected emails and messages and text and SMS messages on your iPhone? Smishing. And the U.S. government is putting alerts out on it. Apparently what happens is that they send a randomly selected. I've had a few of them. It'll be like, it could be this, like somebody saying, hey, what are you doing for lunch? Let's get together. What do you suggest? That's all it says. And I got to think for a second, who was I supposed to have lunch with today? That's just a come on. They want you to engage them in a conversation. And what apparently happens is after a while, you find out that they made a mistake and they sent it to you. And her name is Laura, and she likes older men, and she would love to be able to buy me dinner. What kind of credit card do I like to use? And it just goes downhill from there. It's not a very good outcome. So that's smishing. And the other one that they do, and my poor mother, God rest her soul, got hit with this one. This is the one where you get the text message or phone call that says that your son has been thrown in jail, and unless they get a money sent to me immediately, I'm going to hold on. First, I gotta roll my shirt. I got lint on it. Okay, I got it. Alex was just doing it, so I just want to be cool. If you don't send the money, my mom was very upset. She was going to send the money to these people. That's called smishing. So be on the lookout. If you don't recognize the email or the name of the person that's sending you a text message on your phone, just ignore it. I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, I know I got all these people that want to have lunch with me. Now, I don't, I'm just not going to do it. So there we go. Anybody else have that, a recent occurrence of that? Alex, did they do smishing in Canada?
No, they do, but I never experience it. I don't have, I imagine more people get hit with that on a landline, but I got to tell you, I get so much spam on my cell phone. I don't know where they're getting my number, and maybe you guys have experienced this too, but I now use the feature on my iPhone that says silence unknown caller. So unless you're actually in my address book, it doesn't ring. I don't get any sound. It goes straight to voicemail, and then of course with visual voicemail I can see the message and I can just delete it. But I'm getting all of these, and it's funny because all these spam calls, they're all robo-dials, and they're in Chinese for some reason. So clearly they're not targeted, because I don't understand that language. So it's very strange. Lots of that going on.
Yeah, I fake it and talk back to them. Of course, I'm probably upsetting somebody by making fun of them, but yeah, it's a problem. The what you're describing is called whitelisting. And sorry, again, another pronoun. I have no idea if somebody's going to take exception to it. But what whitelisting is that you only communicate with those people that you choose to. So if you have a list, it could be your contact list in your phone, or flagged list in your whether it's an Android or an iPhone. The only calls that are going to get through, or the only text messages that you're going to receive, are the ones that are on that list. I think that's a very a good way to do it, whitelisting. So be on the lookout for that. And Mark, we haven't heard from you. You work on a radio station, so you got all kinds of scams coming at you guys. Give me a couple juicy examples.
Well, now I understand why Alex never returns my phone calls, because
So you're making offers of boner cream or something, some ridiculous product?
No,
Okay,
not at all.
Good enough.
No,
All right,
we do get our share of scams in the radio station, but we've figured out, how to add those to a list of blocked numbers.
That's a blacklist. Whitelisting is putting numbers that you will only receive the calls from. I guess that's hard at a radio station, because you don't know specifically every single listener, unless they've logged on. Do you have like a thing on your app or on your website that they can subscribe to your newsletter or something like that? Do you collect emails from people?
That is a really good idea. I'm going to write that down. We need
Wait a minute, you're
invitation
not doing
only
that?
phone calls.
Yeah, ones that you can trace back to a user. That just gets rid of all the riffraff out there. And a lot of these are just sweatshops overseas in some country somewhere, with somebody trying to make $1. And the reason they do it is that it works. They're making millions of dollars doing this stuff. And I've got to start recording them. I know it's illegal, but I get so many people that call me and do that I got to start recording them. Like the chisel chest. There was somebody boys. They got into trouble because they're not supposed to record phone conversation. Anyhow, these guys just had a perfect science down to abusing people that were calling. So, and my other theory on smishing or anything else where you're getting solicited phone calls, I think telemarketers should pay for your phone service. That's my. Eventually, I'll run for office. That's going to be my big thing. I said nobody pays for phone anymore. Let the telemarketers pay for your phone service. If they're going to call you, then you have to have some compensation. So that's
just
my
ask
idea.
them for a credit card number. When they
Yeah,
call
you could do that, but
just
are
ask
you
them
going to
for a
get them
credit
to
card
put?
number. When they say, "Why are you asking me for a credit card number?" Say, "I've got to charge you for my time.
Exactly.
$1,000 first 15 minutes. What's your credit card number?" Click.
Yeah.
They hang up every time.
All right, you got my vote, Mark. I'm voting for you on the radio ticket. What are you going to do? All right, that's the news of the day and the stuff that's going on. We got St. Paddy's coming tomorrow. Is that a holiday that you guys, did they celebrate St. Paddy's Day up there in Canada?
They do. Young people do that in their 20s and drink way too much. But no, that's not my scene.
You wear green toque?
That's something for like a 19 and 20-year-old. They go out to go out clubbing and drink themselves into a stupor, but yeah, not
What,
for me.
what age?
I'm in my 40s, Mitch. I'm old now.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, what age do you pass where you just stop, going out to the bar and hanging out and meeting people and getting drunk and sloppy, fall down, throwing up all night long? And at what point do you just get over that? Is there a point that, when you reach 40, you just stop doing that?
Well,
Because I just think it's stupid.
Well, it is stupid, and for me, it happened a lot earlier than that. I mean, I think by my late 20s, I think by 28, that might have even been too old. But I feel like there's this window of opportunity.
For drinking.
So just so people know, in Canada, you can legally drink at 19. It's not 21 like in the US.
Hey, 19.
So I feel like there's this window of opportunity between 19 and about 26, maybe 27 at the most, because I feel like once you get into your late 20s, you're kind of starting to figure things out with your life, you're figuring stuff out with your career, and you start to really pull back on a lot of that crazy stuff, and it's just not good. You can't sustain it. It's not good for your health. It's certainly not good for your waistline. It's not good for your pocketbook. It's ridiculous. You can't keep that up.
Well, you know what? That is a great statement you just made. I embellished that in any possible way. You should transcribe it, put it on a website, put it on your Facebook page. That's very well put and said, in a responsible way. That, I know that all the beer companies are screaming, or the Cuervo companies are screaming at us for, jumping down. What do you got in that glass you're just drinking from? Is that just water, or is that? That's no alcohol.
This is a delicious black coffee, freshly roasted from my favorite local coffee roaster.
So I was watching Reacher, the series,
Mm-hmm.
and he was at some rich person's house, and they were talking about this blend of coffee that was made from coffee beans that cats ate, and then when the cats poop it out, they collect the beans and they roast it.
They're not. I forget what that's called. It's not. It is not from cats. I think it's from some kind of
mongoose.
It's
monkeys.
It might be a monkey. Anyways, it's dumb. A lot of those animals live in cages and in really, really poor conditions. So it's not something that I would support. And also, I mean, who wants to pay $100 for a cup of coffee? It's
hold
silly.
your cat up so we all get a chance to see.
Okay.
Rose there.
Yeah, she's there, and man, her claws are sharp. Jeez. But
and
anyways,
don't declaw cats. That's not cool.
Yeah, that's her.
Let them have their claws.
That's cruel.
Okay, cool.
I don't think anybody does that anymore.
That's good. Mark, how about you? Do you have any questions, comments, excuses?
Nope. Getting ready for corned beef and cabbage tomorrow, and a little bit of Tim Hortons coffee.
It's going to be a lot of gas.
Tim Hortons
going
in
down
the U.S.?
Yes, you can get it in K-cups.
Oh, no way. I had no idea. Look at that.
What was that? I follow Alex on Facebook. What was that Krabby Shacks or some food place that we were talking about, hamburgers?
Oh, that's Cactus Club. We were talking about Cactus Club.
Sounds painful.
Yeah. No, it's kind of a Cactus Club is an upscale restaurant. It's a pretty nice place. Very good food, very consistent. Not cheap, but very consistent. Good menu.
We have a place here called Kid Shalene's. And kids, there's two locations, one near where I am, and there's another one north of here. And they just have everything. But they've been around forever. And, of course, being the name Shalene's, like, from the movie Cat Ballou, they're Irish, and they celebrate Irish in every possible way. So it's a good day to stay indoors, not on the roads, especially around them, because the police are all in a lather, too, about the whole thing. So, Aaron go Brock, or whatever they say, to you all for St. Paddy's Day. May you wear plenty of green. May you see green if you drink too much, whatever the case may be. All right, subject of the day, thing we want to talk about, and hopefully we'll gather some questions. There was a song that was out in the early 70s, maybe 71, by Don McLean called American Pie. And it's the one that goes, bye, bye, Miss American Pie, drove my Chevy to, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really talking about the day that music died. There was a time that they sort of indicated was after the 60s, Buddy Holly and all those guys, they succumbed to some horrific accident, either in an airplane or a car or drugs or whatever else. And the idea here is that music was on its way out or actually died a terrible death. But other people since then are talking about the difference between the way the music industry worked back in the 70s and 80s and the way it works today. And I think if you talk to any musician, they would say to you, oh, you mean free music? Because most musicians look upon the industry as free. It's free. I mean, getting a record or getting a song out there, you're not getting paid enough by the record companies. The deals that are being made used to get signed to a record label, and you'd be paid a sum of money and maybe a percentage of the sales of that album or CD or album or record that came out. But for the most part today, they're not selling those things anymore, not like they used to anyhow. It's a download, or it's part of a service that you get. So essentially, since Napster and all that, that's kind of like the point I'm saying, that the record companies didn't wake up and smell the cat's ass coffee and made the mistake of making bad decisions. So what used to be a thriving industry, the record industry, back in the 60s and 70s particularly, and in the 80s it's sort of taken a downturn. That's kind of the point where I'm saying is the music really died at that point. There used to be a great relationship between record companies and radio stations. Records and songs and artists, new artists, unknown artists, or well-known artists like, Elton John or the Rolling Stones or whoever, got play on a radio, and that's where they got their exposure. And people would hear it on the radio, especially on a top 40 station when they play the heck out of it, and they'd go out and buy it at a record store.
Yeah.
Or they might go to, maybe a mail order place or Tower Records.
Yeah, and that was my
Goody.
Youth. I experienced that a lot.
Did
Absolutely.
you say Utes? Did you say Utes?
Utes.
No, Utes.
But
Utes.
that was a big part of it. And I had friends that were in bands, and it was a big deal. Everybody tried to send their demo tape in to all the big radio stations. There's two. There's CFox and Rock 101, but mainly CFox, because that was all the modern music. And one of my guitar instructors actually got his music on CFox, which was a big deal for him. And the live shows that he was doing at that time started to get a little bit bigger. The crowd started to get a little bigger because they heard that single on CFox. So it was a big deal, and they actually interviewed the band on the radio. So that was that kind of made you a mini celebrity by getting on the radio, and a lot of that's kind of gone away, right?
Oh, definitely. And again, trying to pick that dividing line between before and after being now. And it's also what our Last Angry DJ is all about, is discussing these differences in the way things have been. Back then there was a great relationship between the record companies and the radio stations. The record companies would give you anything, money even, and other stuff. By the way, I was never offered anything. They were too stupid to give a greenhorn 20-year-old money or free lunches or liar's poker or whatever. But anyhow, the point that I'm making is that there was a great relationship. It was a symbiotic relationship. And back then there might have been 15 or 20 giant record companies that were out there. Today there might be 4 or 5 big record companies, most of which aren't even in the United States. So they really kind of screwed the pooch. Can I say that? Screwed the pooch? All right, bad visual. With how they distributed music, because the thing that was working in the old radio days, this is before the internet, folks, was the distribution that radio had. In other words, chances are if a record was a hit in Philadelphia, like at WFIL, where I worked as a music director, it would end up being added to radio stations across the country because it was one of those stations that just influenced a lot of people. So the distribution method was records would get a chance, and once in a while it would just be a lucky shot for some artist, and it would get played, and people would like, wow, that's really cool. Let's buy into that, and then it becomes a bit of a snowball effect that just sort of catches some momentum. But today, there's so many things vying for your attention, and the exposure is coming to you from all kinds of different sources. Like, how many different ways, Alex, do you find that you get exposed to new music?
That's a depressing question, and my answer is going to be even more depressing because I honestly, I've become so set in my ways, and I listen to mostly the same artists, and the same artists I've listened to since I was a kid, and I'll listen to a lot of older records. I'll listen to whatever new albums they put out, but honestly, I'm not really finding a lot of stuff. Occasionally, I will find new artists. I'm not really a big playlist guy, but a lot of the times it's usually coworkers, because we talk a lot about music, and coworker might say, "Hey, do you know about you like that artist? You might like this artist." So I find it's usually just word of mouth is normally, if I'm going to discover someone new, it's usually somebody else telling me, you should go out and check this band.
All right, sounds cool. Mark, I think a question came in, or at least a comment that's filling in the blanks here a little bit. Can you
comment
read it?
Came in.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, a comment came in from Brediverse. I'm going to turn it into a question. True or false? Apparently, the jacubird of Brazil eats coffee cherries, digests the pulp, and poops out whole beans that make some of the world's most expensive coffee, $1,700 a kilogram. Nature's little barista.
And now you know why I don't drink coffee.
False?
I'd say false. And is that called a tuki bird? Remember that? Anybody recall tuki? Tuki. It's from Tarzan. Anyhow, what are you going to do? So it's right out there. I'm going to say no. Anybody else want to contradict that? It's fake. Okay, cool. And thank you for your comments. And folks, how do you get in here? Alex has got all the answers. He'll tell you how you can get in and ask your
you can
ask
questions. You can continue to ask questions, or just putting general comments. You can go to ask.thelastangry.dj.com. That's ask.thelastangry.dj.com. Operators are standing by.
Very appreciate that. He's always there, ready to jump right in. And while you're doing all that, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We've been sort of scratching our heads trying to figure out how do we get our subscribe numbers higher, because I had this guy that lined up to be one of our guests on the show, and I won't say his name, was very up for doing it. And then he said, you only have 162 subscribers on your YouTube. And I was saying, well, we're a growing concern here. We're getting somewhere. But they bailed out. They said, call me when you have 1,000. And so we need to start on that. So if you haven't, please take a moment to spread the word and tell people to please hit the subscribe button on YouTube. That does well. And is there a similar action you can do on a Apple, Spotify, or one of those things? They don't have a like button or a promote button. You just listen, and that's good enough. Is that how it works?
Yeah, there are some things baked into Apple Music. All these streaming music services, they absolutely do. Like, I'll just speak to Apple Music because that's pretty much what I use. But you can, there is a recommendation engine. There is an algorithm that can personalize suggestions, and it does this automatically on the home screen, on the home tab inside of the music app. But I believe it does get better if you actually start tapping the heart button on songs. So it'll basically, that's just telling the engine that I want to hear more of this. I like this type of thing. And I think that informs the algorithm to give you better suggestions.
And it's cool to see the hearts popping up on the screen on YouTube when you do it. Somebody do it right now so we can see some hearts. Give us some love. Give us some love. We want to see it happen. Yeah, there it is. Thank you. I think Brediverse just gave us a shot there, so thank you. Appreciate that. So we were talking about what happened in the music industry is that the distribution method changed from the 4 or 5 local radio stations you used to listen to the world and the internet. And, you're never a couple of milliseconds away from anybody that could be playing music, their favorite kind of music, but very specific types of music. It's not top 40 so much anymore, but it's very specific. Like, what do you like, punk country? There's probably a station for that. So no matter where you are, no matter what you do, you've got a way to be exposed to it. But there's so much bandwidth that it requires to be able to pay attention to that, and the distribution is not restricted to a small number of radio stations. The entire music industry is screwed. It totally is. And if you talk to any artist, big or small, or one that's lived through this transition, they're all going to call it free music. It's free music. No better way. And that's why they go on tour, to be able to make some money. By the way, did you see what happened with Journey in Las Vegas? They had to cancel the song right in the middle of Don't Stop Believin'. Apparently there was a fire, and they're trying to reenact the MGM Deep Purple event. Anyhow, when you go out in public with a lot of people, shit happens. Let's face it. That's the danger of it. So that's the only place, Taylor Swift makes billions of dollars. I mean, what's up with that? Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, there's one thing that I've been thinking about lately too, because we were talking about physical media earlier. Do you think that we should maybe bring back vinyl for radio play, like playing back like an actual DJ using physical media, using? I know some do. It's not very common, but I think there's something to be said about that. Somebody curating music, bring physical media. It's more involving as well because you have to really, really pay attention. Do you think that we should sort of revive that on terrestrial radio, Mitch, or do you think that's this?
I'd like to throw that over to Mark.
Silly, we're just living in the past.
He runs a radio station. Would you go back to playing tapes and records just because it's cool?
Well, I don't know much about the music radio because we're news talk, all the formats, but it would seem to me that the people that really like vinyl like it for the technical reasons and the sound quality. And I'm not sure that that would carry through all the processing that happens on a radio transmitter. So I'm not sure that you would get the advantages of the sound quality over the advantages of saving the space of all those turntables and being able to create playlists.
Well, the other part is that most radios are automated now. So a music station is not very likely to be actually somebody sitting in a chair playing those records. It's pre-programmed or pre-recorded, except like Alex said, there's probably some specialty guys that really like their music and they're playing it, they're live, so that they have that presentation and do that. But what's the guy's name? Is it Steve DiBiato that has the talk show on YouTube? There's a guy named DiBiato that has the best interview show going. White-haired guy, knows his music inside and out. If you do a
Mitch,
search
you're talking about Beato. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Beato, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
It's Beat. It looks like BEAT. Yeah. So what's his first name now? I want to get it right.
Is it Mark? I can't remember. Is his first name? No, it's
somebody look it
up. I should know this.
He is awesome. But one of the things that he, when they're telling these, excuse me, great stories with artists that were there when the songs were being recorded in the studio, they all would say they generally would leave the song alone as a master.
It's Rick. Sorry, I didn't interrupt. It's Rick Beato.
Beato. Thank you. And sorry, Rick, for screwing up your name. Great show. Check it out. As soon as you get off here, look at the interviews he does with Hans Zimmer. I just saw one with him there, and all the guys from Steely Dan, all the session players for that. This is awesome. He's really good. But anyhow, the point I'm trying to make is that a lot of these old-time session guys, they're not so old, but they still play, are saying, we really liked what the radio station did, and we didn't really know our songs were hits until we were driving a car and we heard it, and it was just something that the radio does to the songs that just made them sound so spectacular. Now, Mark, you may or may not know what it is that does that, but radio for years has been in a battle of loudness, and they process the heck out of the songs. They could do the same thing in the studio. They could take an Omni or a Omnia or an Orban processor into the studio and process it the same way. But it's going to screw up things down the line. But anyhow, part of that mystical sound quality that you get from a vinyl record, a lot of that stuff is a side effect of a needle in a groove playing back the sound. It's not necessarily better quality, it's different. That's the word I would use. And some people prefer that analog difference in sound. I do too. I think it's kind of cool. But I'm an analog guy. I'm like 70. I don't really embrace the crunchy digital sound that's out there. I like that smooth audio from analog stuff. In fact, my mic preamp that I have over here from my U87 is in a very expensive Neve, and it's built on an 8801 Neve processor designed by Rupert Neve, God rest his soul. And it's not digital. It's digitally controlled, but it's an analog device, which I think is something. I don't think most engineers these days really care whether it's a digital device or an analog device or an analog that's controlled by digital. there's a certain quality of sound that comes from these devices, and they have a very unique signature that adds to the quality of sound. There's an interesting story that Rick DiBeato, I'm gonna screw it up again, was talking
Beato.
about Beato. That's it, Beato. Sorry, Rick. Is that some guys in Abbey Road, when they were recording some Beatles songs, they said they got this guitar sound. I think it's in Revolution, and the way they did it is that they plugged the guitar directly into the board. It was one of these old handmade mixing boards that went into a 4-track tape machine, and they just drove the heck out of the channel, ran into a limiter, and they came back out and went into another channel and drove the heck out of that. And that's how they got the sound. I mean, it's not super clean, but it's just what it was. And they were laughing because they said they had to get that session laid down before they called the guys in the lab coats came in, the guys from Abbey Road, that the engineers, because they would have stopped it immediately because they were afraid it would be blowing up their console or doing something horrible to it. So a lot of things are happy accidents or sound effect. A lot of stuff in recording studios, what little there are of them now, still like to record to tape because tape has a certain kind of a sound to it. And it sounds interesting, and it's analog sounding. There's a little bit of compression that happens from analog recording, and it's not a bad thing. It's like even in odd harmonics when you're processing with a tube or my old Neve processor. Alex, why don't you explain why those things sound better to our human ears?
Well, you just touched on one of those components, and that's even order harmonics. Basically, what we're talking about is distortion. But it's not the kind of distortion that you would think that would not be pleasant, because that's odd order harmonics. So when you hear people refer to terms as tape saturation, when you basically feed a signal into an analog gain stage and you're pushing it really, really hard, you get this natural soft kind of clipping that's actually very desirable, and it can be very heavy-handed, or it can be really, really subtle. That's to the taste of the mix engineer or the producer, or whoever's actually involved with creating this sound. And also, I'm a big believer of having ideas, having a vision, and committing to that vision. Because a lot of people play it safe now, especially even in the video production world too. Everyone's working with LED walls, and we do all this visual effects and stuff like that. And I just feel like we've somehow lost the art, the ability, this old school way of if you're shooting a movie, let's light it right. Let's bake that in. Let's come up with this creative vision of how we want it to look and do it that way. And especially with sound, I'm a big proponent of that. But a lot of that has changed, and I have to admit there are a lot of benefits of digital. I mean, the recallability is a big thing as well. So and I'm not talking just in the music production world, but to keep it in sort of the realm of broadcast, for example. I mean, Mark can even talk about this, even though, Mark, I know you're not an audio engineer, but as being involved in the world of radio, audio quality is obviously very important. It's a very competitive landscape, and how your station sound is incredibly important. And I'm sure even you can admit that these modern digital processors have far too many advantages, and the advantages outweigh any potential negatives. Yes, you might be nostalgic for the days of having to manually crank dials, but being able to sit on your computer anywhere in the world, even in theory, being able to have a remote controlled interface to change all this stuff, it's probably pretty cool, right?
We're still on analog.
all that monologue, and he's like, we're analog, sorry.
Well, in the U.S., we don't have an all digital broadcast system yet. We might.
What was that, Mark?
It's analog.
So I was going to say, Brediverse wanted to make a point that WWOZ in New Orleans still spins vinyl almost entirely.
So that means somebody's actually in a room.
Somebody's actually still doing it.
Playing records and carts and stuff like that, just like they used to do in my day when somebody had to be in there all night. It's not like, nowadays they lock the door at 6 p.m. and the computer takes over and nobody's in the building. It's spooky. but that's
Yeah,
the
well,
way it works.
Mitch, our previous guest back in the early days of this show when we launched it, Larry Hennessy, who's on Jack FM. He does this show where he brings carts of records and he's playing actual vinyl. He's curating stuff, talking about the album, talking about the history, how the album was made, talking about just like giving the listeners interesting tidbits that they might not know about how that record was made, or a little slice of history from that specific moment in time when that album was made. So I love stuff like that.
Yeah, that's why I like Rick DiBeato. Check him out on YouTube. Did I say his name wrong?
He's going to
again?
mispronounce it for the. I'm giving up.
All right, so thanks. I'm just going to say I'm going to mispronounce Rick's name. Rick D. We'll call him Ricky D. Check it out on YouTube. I'm serious. It's really you're going to spend the whole evening watching his interviews because he's so good at what he's a guitar player and he talks to these artists. But the stories that come out, like you're saying with Larry Hennessy, that stuff that happened behind the scenes, like when they were recording, Tequila by the Champs, that's Glenn Campbell playing the lead guitar on that. You wouldn't think that, but that's it. And there was a group called the Wrecking Crew, which was a bunch of session engineers, including, what's it, Carol Kane? I think it's Carol Kane, the bass guitarist. She's unbelievable. But a lot of these guys have in common is that, banged into the mic, that they played in jazz sessions. So a lot of jazz and blues went into making rock and roll what it is today and what it was before. If you ask anybody from Led Zeppelin, they're going to say, we're a blues band. Same thing with the Rolling Stones. And they respect the blues artist that went before us, the poor starving blues artist that went before us all and made the sound that's so unique to to North America. And it's just really cool. But anyhow, the original part of this conversation, the thread of it, was how have things changed on distribution and monetization of recording. There really isn't, unless you're really into music and you love it and you have a passion for playing, you're not doing it to get rich. Those days are gone because there's only room for so many, Genesis and Fleetwood Macs and Taylor Swifts and et cetera, where they can do things the way they kind of like they used to. But they just, nowadays, most of that stuff's being recorded in somebody's home studio with Pro Tools. And it used to be they worked with 4 tracks for, like, I think Sgt. Pepper's was recorded on 4 tracks. Well, now they have as many tracks as you want. It's just as big as your Pro Tools device can be. So it's pretty crazy. Mark, does Chad have a comment that's worth checking out here? I hear it's pretty
Chad
fun.
does have a comment. He's lamenting about old TV, DJs spinning vinyl, new folks dropping turkeys out of helicopters. Oh, how I miss WKRP.
Yeah, what does he said? In God's name, I didn't know that turkeys couldn't fly. Oh, the humanity. And the play-by-play of the turkeys falling out was just a claim. It's something simple and kind of silly, but just sort of struck a nerve with America and the world, for that matter, that those guys, they were real people living a real life. And if you look at Johnny Fever while he's playing records, I don't know how those guys always manage to drop the record, the needle on the record, and hit the exact spot every time. Obviously, that's a little Hollywood pizzazz going on there. So the music industry is in a kerfuffle now, as the word goes. There's nobody really making money on it. People aren't buying concept albums. We were talking to Ricky D was talking to Gilmore. I forget his first name, from Gary Gilmore. What's his name from Pink Floyd? Anyhow, whatever his name is.
David.
David, thank you. Yeah, I'm the music guy. I'm supposed to know all this.
News guy.
They would say, like, a lot of that stuff we just forget it. So it's Beato with a B. Thank you, Alexander. Appreciate that. Rick Beato. So say Beato, Mitch, a few times. Now I'm going to do it correctly. Love to have him on the show. He'd be great. Tells a lot of interesting stories. So I agree with you, Alex. I think that's the future maybe of music radio is somebody that has a sensitivity to the way things need to be done to musically and collectively create this stuff, not stuff that's a knockoff that's done with all samples from other hit records that have preceded it. People are really creating something original and doing it the old-fashioned way. Maybe there's something to be said for that, and bringing that back, and people to have knowledge of how these songs were recorded as a concept. And as I was saying about David Gilmour, sorry, David, again, it's the COVID that's kicked. It's long COVID. I can't remember anything. It's long COVID. Did I just say that? I don't know. So what it is that these stories that go along with songs that we grew up with, I don't care how old you are really interesting, because sometimes they reflect the times, they reflect the technology, they reflect the musicality. They might even reflect some of the politics that was going on. And I do feel sorry for the old days. And it is at the heart of what this program is all about. I'm the last angry DJ because I'm sort of upset about what's happened, what's transpired from the old days and the old ways of things being done. And things are now being different. So they're different now, Alex. And, how much for the better versus the way, if you could go back in a time machine back to the 70s or 80s, would you consider that to be a cool thing for music, or you would miss your Pro Tools?
Oh, I would definitely miss aspects of it for sure. I don't think I would want to go back, but I don't know how. I've never cut stuff on tape. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to record audio on a 4-track Tascam Portacapture, but that was to effectively tape, but nothing serious, like a real serious multi-track tape machine. But I would love to learn that. I mean, I can learn anything. I love analog. I kind of, my head, half of it somewhat lives in the past, so I think I'd probably get used to it. And you know what? I think there is something real to option paralysis. I think having too many plugins, too many features, being completely overloaded, I think it really paralyzes people, and people are incapable of making decisions very quickly and easily now. But I don't think we should go back. I think we should just keep moving forward. I think these systems need to keep evolving and get out of our way. Like, just allow the musician to be creative. It's very easy to be overwhelmed and bake in too many features, but I think it'd be fun if I could get in a time machine and go back into the past. I think I'd probably enjoy it. I probably wouldn't have as much anxiety because I wouldn't have a cell phone. I wouldn't have the internet. I wouldn't have all these other things to really fill my head up with time that may be completely meaningless. So to answer your question, yes, I think I'd probably enjoy it.
He who dies with the most plugins wins. That's what my favorite phrase. And it is confusing. Mark, I want to shoot over to you because the questions are coming in fast and furious now. What's going on?
We have a question from the Stubborn Rock. So, do you like digital audio mixers?
I'm going to throw that to Alex because you sell them.
I do. In fact, I use digital mixers. I absolutely love them. In fact, this show is being produced right now on a digital mixer. This is a Yamaha DM3D, which is what my microphone is connected to, and that goes out over Dante, which is, again, a digital technology, converting the analog bits going through the network into a digital stream that's going into Zoom. So I use them all the time. In fact, as much as I love analog audio, especially in the world of music production, for live use, I know some people have hybrid setups, and I love incorporating analog gear, but for the most part, I would never, ever produce a live show with an analog console. No way. Because, first of all, I love, if money, no object. Yes, if I could take an SSL console out on the road, it would sound fantastic. But the reality is, who wants to carry that thing? Who wants to ship that? Who wants to have the crew to carry that thing around? And on top of that, all the outboard gear, because all the processing on digital consoles, you can put it in this tiny little package, right? And so with analog now, I've got to have racks and racks of outboard gear. I've got to have dynamics processing for every single channel, which means racks and racks and racks of hardware. And let's face it, not everybody wants to carry that around with them on the road.
An interesting tip about the SSL. I was around when the SSL 4000 was out. It's an analog board, digitally controlled. And to be honest with you, it wasn't the best sounding console out there. It didn't sound better than an API or a Neve. It might have sounded better than an MCI. But in the early days, digitally controlled consoles, they didn't have quick enough solid state devices that could slew fast enough. So when they were doing a gain change, you get this thing called zipper sound, and that would be the digital stepping from one little bit to the next, and it would almost sound like a zipper going along. Now with sampling and aliasing, it's a lot better. But back in the old days, digital was not a good thing, especially if you ever. Did any of you guys ever hear the first Philips and Sony CD players? They were horrible.
Oh yeah,
they were horrible.
Yeah,
they had famously bad analog digital analog converters in them that didn't alias for crap. They were like they might have even been as bad as 8-bit, and 8-bit sounds horrible. That's
well, and on that note too, Mitch, it wasn't just the early hardware that was bad, which it was. But it was the way that we mastered CDs too, and that has got. And it took quite a while for people to actually kind of figure it out. So early CDs that were released in the 80s and even into the early 90s weren't that fantastic. In fact, there's lots of artists that have had CDs remastered and reissued 2, 3, even sometimes 4 times because they're still trying to get it right.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because when I decided a couple of years ago to convert my entire CD library from the original masters, they recorded at 44.1 kilohertz and stereo, linear PCM. And the question was, well, how am I going to master these? Because 44.1 by itself has been sort of passed by as like the lowest rung of audio quality in terms of aliasing and everything else. I sampled everything at 88.2. I oversampled, and the reason for that was that mathematically, when it's doing the conversion to 44.1 and doubling it, it's an even Steven matchup. It's not like trying to go right to 96. I think 88.2 sounded better than 96 kilohertz in terms of the way I mastered it. So I did it 88.2, figuring in my lifetime I'm never going to do this again. It took me years to convert all these libraries over. And here's the great thing. There's like a curve for the quality of aliasing and mastering in the tech world. And then the other curve over here is the quality of my hearing. And somewhere between the two crashed into each other, and I got a little tinnitus and other things that are limiting my frequency. I can't hear cell phones when they get played back on TV. I don't know why, but just the frequency of a cell phone, the high pitched ringing. I just never hear. I just see the actor talking, all of a sudden going and reaching over and picking up their phone. I'm like, what the heck's going on? And somebody in the room say, "What's up with you?" So, so two things are fighting each other, but I can hear through all that, because I think things like harmonic distortion, other things you can learn to listen for. As some people just don't hear it because they're not listening for it. It's like the first time somebody explained to you the FedEx logo is an arrow pointing to the right, and now you can't unsee it. It's the same thing with audio. If you learn what the distortion is and what to listen for, and you hear things like the zipper effect that I was talking about, or some aliasing errors that are going on, or what's happening to the harmonics on a piano or a string quartet. Once you've learned that, you can't look back because now you're spoiled. You're ruined. Alex, has that happened to you? Learning this stuff to the point where now you're listening technically and not enjoying it for what it is as a presentation?
Yes, that is a real thing, unfortunately. And I have to say, as somebody who has well-tuned ears and also a good sound system, man, when records are not well recorded, you really, really hear all the flaws. And it kind of spoils things. It kind of ruins it a little bit. And so, when you become an audiophile, you kind of become a snob, especially if you do have the technical skills and you are used to hearing these things and you know what to look for and you know what's supposed to sound good. It does kind of ruin things for you.
Yeah, and it happens. I mean, I listen to Patsy Cline and Crazy. Now, you may think I'm crazy listening to that song, but sometime if you have a decent quality recording of it on a record or a Masterphonics CD, I'm dating myself here, listen to that song. It sounds brilliant. It sounds better than all this new digital hoo-ha stuff that's being used. And you listen to it and say, that was recorded back in the early 60s, I think, maybe even 50s. And the sound of the bass and the instruments is so crystal clear and so well done. And they left enough space, as Quincy Jones puts it, enough room for God to walk into the recording and fit into the recording. It's technique. Sometimes with a recording, there's so many things that can go wrong just because you digitally know, well, I'm going to get the volume here and okay, I'm done. It's not like that. You got to think about down the line, like how the mastering lab is going to be able to fit that bass line into the grooves because you have a limitation there. And whether or not you record it with a lot of distortion and limiting, because it's stuck. Once it's on there, you can't undo that. Well, you kind of can. That's what's happening to the music industry now with radio, is that they're mastering a lot of hit songs with they just crush the dynamic range so that their song, when it gets played on the air, is loud. Yeah, it's loud, but it sounds like crap. So, and it's very fatiguing. You know, they found out that there's bad things about that. So, it's a mishmash. It's like it's more political instead of technical in terms of its presentation. The industry is politicized to the point where the guys in the front office that sit in their comfy chairs firing people left and right for various things are making all the decisions instead of the people that, you know, they physically splice those tapes or do those mixes or records those songs. And that's why I like people like your buddy, Alex, that knows the stories behind how these things got recorded. Look at the Beatles with what George Martin did with 4 channels. And even and it was also, I think, 4 channels, and they recorded Dark Side of the Moon. They had to bump tracks over. They record 4 tracks and bump them over to 1 or 2 channels, and then they went on to record. Guess what? Once they've bumped, you can't undo that. There's no undo back in those days. And yet they left the right amount of space for everything, and they recorded it with the right quality, knowing in advance. And that just takes people with a passion for the industry and understanding it. So some of that stuff sounds better on vinyl. Some of that stuff sounds okay on digital, but I'm just hoping my hearing goes before it's all gone to 32-bit whatever hoo-ha stuff that I can't appreciate. People with make you go into the audio store and want me to buy a Mark Levinson amplifier for $12,000. I mean, really? Can you hear the difference between a Mark Levinson and a Macintosh, which maybe costs $5,000, or a Yamaha, which might cost $2,000? Alex, you sell this stuff.
The answer is yes. The answer is yes.
People can hear that. Okay.
I can hear all those, even at the upper echelon. I've walked into a room and had demos of like $150,000 stereo system, and you can hear the differences in components for sure. There are small differences between all of those for sure.
So can you hear oxygen-free speaker cable? It's like 10 gauge or 5 gauge.
Okay, I'm going to say something because as somebody who didn't believe any of that stuff until you actually try it, and the thing is you have to have a decent set of speakers in the first place, decent electronics. Your whole signal chain has to be pretty good. But yes, I can hear differences between cables. Sometimes they're really, really subtle. But absolutely, you know, it comes down because impedance matters a lot with audio. I don't want to get too far into this because, you know, it's talking about cables. It's like talking about religion, okay? Because people get very upset when you start talking about, do power cables make a difference? Yeah, by the way, power cables, they make a difference. They absolutely do make a difference. So.
Yeah, they make a difference until they get plugged into the wall, and it's got aluminum Romax back to your
doesn't matter. That last
box.
Stretch to the power supply matters. Try it.
I think that some of you guys are smoking too much wacky weed when you make those decisions. But you're right. I mean, there is a difference you can hear between some speaker, and it's a lot of times it's how you match the devices to each other. Like if you have a right speaker, correct speaker that has a impedance, which is the resistance essentially, but it's an inductance and impedance together that is consistent It's not always 8 ohms, folks. It can go down, it can go 2 to 16 in the process of playing back. If the speaker's designed well, it's in a narrower category. It doesn't load the amplifier up as much. And if you have bad wires going between the speaker and the amplifier, the wires are transferring power to your speakers in the most efficient way possible. And it's also affecting anything called a dampening factor. So I'll get into some of that twisty, crazy technical stuff. It's better that you have a matched set of speakers to a matched amplifier with a reasonable power cable that doesn't cost $300. So there's some crazy, like you say, they drink their own version of Kool-Aid at some of these high-end sound stores, and the same affects some people. It's like art in an art gallery where people are listening to a song on vinyl or going into an art place and looking at a beautiful art masterpiece and commenting on it, having no idea what they're talking about. So I'll give you that. Your ears are golden ears, and you know what to listen for. I'm with that. I can hear an amplifier when it's acting up. I can tell you that when I go into a club and they've got some speakers hooked up out of phase, it drives me freaking up the wall. And to the point where I got to go to the owner of the club and tell him, you got to adjust a phase on the left speaker. Oh, how do I do that? Just boom, flip it over, boom, pop it back in. And you flip the phase on it, you're not going to have that phase distortion.
Mitch, do you sound like Jerry Lewis when you start talking like about technical nerdy
pretty
stuff
lady,
like
pretty speakers, you know.
Excuse me, I believe your speaker's out of phase.
Yeah, it's out of phase. And it just keeps coming back. Like the Super Bowl that just went by. We're not allowed to say Super Bowl. That big game that got played. If you listen to the broadcast on a decent stereo system or hi-fi system that had all the codecs, the Dolby and Apple Hoo-Ha, whatever the heck it is, they really screwed up the middle channel on that. The other day, I was watching the remastered version of Star Trek on Paramount, and the space, the final frontier part. The music was blasting, and his voice was in the center channel, kind of like space, the final frontier. And I'm like, who screwed this up? It's like the greatest technical wizardry of all time, and they remastered it, and somebody screwed up the center channel audio. So it just drives me crazy. Do we have another question popping in here?
We do. Bretaverse would like to know our thoughts on the PreSonus Fader Port 16 and using it with Logic Pro.
Wow, I'm going to throw that to Alex. I hate PreSonus, but like, what do I know?
Brett, all I will say to you is that the PreSonus Fader Port products are so 5 or 6 years ago. I'm going to give you 2 words that I want you to look up. SSL UF8. I'm going to repeat it again. SSL UF8. That's solid state logic UF8. That is the control surface that you want. It is much, much better. It is a newer product. Comes with its own SSL.
It's about $2,000, isn't it?
It's got, no, it's less than $2,000. A lot less.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's a fantastic motorized control surface, and you get a bunch of free, really cool SSL channel strip plugins. And it's a whole ecosystem. They also have the UF one and the UC one. So one of those, and I can't remember, it's either the UC one or the UF one. That's just the compressor section. And so these are all physical controls that allow you to control the plugins, but you get real tactile feel. And it's a much better MIDI control surface than the PreSonus. That's what everyone's buying now.
Yeah, and some of the head insights, just to have a mix for your headphone that talks to your computer. There's a ton of them out there. I think our buddy Hershey, who's watching, uses an SSL. I think it's a Solo something. But there's a ton of stuff out there. Here's the thing to be careful. If you buy a premium device like a Gracie or something like that, make sure it's what it is, because I think Neve has a new, it's Neumann, has a new headphone amplifier system. They don't even make it. It's a rebranded with the Neve name and price tag to go with it. So keep your eyes open and use your ears. Take time. Don't just buy it just because it's expensive and it has a big popular name on it. It's something that's kind of cool. Well, we kind of jumped all over the place here. We're lamenting the changes in the music industry. So what is the day that the music died? Alex, can we kind of wrap that up and say, when did it actually die? When did it become free music?
No, you're not going to get me to admit that. I don't subscribe to that. I think, people always from every single generation will always say, oh, music was the best back in, whatever, but no.
Yeah, cough it up. So good. Mark, you?
When Buddy Holly died.
Well,
That's the day the
that's
music
what the
died.
song American Pie is about, Buddy Holly passing. And some of the other guys, bless you. Alex has the sneezies. Maybe you're allergic to your cat. Do you ever think of that? That could be a real challenge
I
to
think he's
your
allergic to that
your
drink.
future. Yeah, definitely. He's celebrating Patty's Day a little bit too early. What are you going to do? All right, so Buddy Holly, I'd say that's one of the times that music died. But the music industry as we know it today, I think Napster killed it and Apple sort of reinvented it. But I don't think Apple did us any favors getting everything on iTunes because it just sort of brought it all under one roof. And the people that really lost through that whole process of Apple is the musicians. Because nowadays, like I said, when a musician signs a deal, the record companies say, "Oh, we'll give you a percentage of the streaming revenues." Well, we're talking pennies on the dollar, like little tiny pieces of a penny. So there's real no motivation there to do it as a business plan to make records. And people don't buy albums anymore; they buy singles. So what are you going to do about that? So it's a whole different beast. So we spent enough time talking about the negativity of that. Do we have any other questions that are popping in, or can we acknowledge some of the folks that are on YouTube following along? It's an interesting subject that we've been talking about. Mark?
So Hershey says SSL2,
Okay, no, well,
and it has definitely done over 400 episodes. I'm not sure what has done.
he's
over
probably
400.
referring to office hours.
Probably office hours, yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. And some other folks in there, Jerry Hoyle, Betaverse. We just talked about him.
We talked about Bradyverse. Jerry Hoyle said greetings to all.
Chad
And
Lafarge.
we talked about
always good to
Chad
have him.
earlier.
And it's good to have you. Again, take a moment, just a tiny moment of your time, and smash that subscribe button. It makes us feel better, and then I can shut up about it. But I'm
Steven
thinking of now
Stryker's
getting
back.
graphics. Who else?
Steven Stryker's back.
All right, there we go. And Steve, thanks for holding off, making room for other people to ask questions. Very kind of you. We were getting like huge numbers. Do you think it's time we have Steve back again? He's been off, for a
Sure.
couple of weeks? Get
Steve's
him
great. We
back
should
in
have him
here.
back.
Yeah.
I think he's a very interesting guy to talk to. And if you have a suggestion, anybody, I'd love to get Rick Beato, sorry, I'll get it right, on the show. And thank you for he put a cue card up for me. It's Beato. So it looks like Beto to me. Would love to get somebody like that on. But, again, they're going to look at our subscribe numbers and say, hey, I'd love to help you out, pal, but you're just not quite there yet. So by smashing that subscribe button, you help us get a little bit closer to where we're going. And as we head into spring, I'm making some very interesting calls to have some other crazy guests. Right now, I don't have anything logged in for next week, so it might be the broadcast boffins here yakking it up again. Alex, you have any other comments or suggestions? You get your voice
No,
back?
but I just wanted just a couple of housekeeping things. Well, first of all, my voice is back, so thank you for
Great.
for letting
Congratulations.
But anyways, just wanted to remind people that if you like this show on YouTube, subscribing does help, sharing it with a friend, and of course, if you prefer the audio version of the show, you can find it in any podcast player of choice for your morning commute. Just subscribe to it. It's available in Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, all available platforms. You can ask your smart device to play this podcast, and it will play it as well. We're on social media at The Last Angry DJ. Email address for comments as well, hello@thelastangrydj.com. And of course, our Discord community. I'll leave the QR code up on the screen here for a second. But if you're not already part of that Discord community, please join us, because that is a great place to chat with us on or after the show. And we can talk about all sorts of other things. You see lots of different categories in there when you'll log in. There's a category for music and TV shows. There's one about tech. There's, whatever you want to talk about. It's a great place to chat.
Yeah, and you're quick to answer them too. So you're all over that. You're watching, and it's what do they call it? Mediated, or whatever they call it when somebody watches over something. You do that well, in spite of the fact you use car jumper cables to power your speakers. You do a great job, Alex. And we want to thank you for being here. Are they oxygen free or solid copper or gold?
They're actually silver plated jumper
Silver
cables. Did you know
plated?
that?
Because of the skin
Silver-plated.
effect of electrons flowing across.
Oh yeah, the
the
skin
surface.
effects. That's actually a big part of it. Yeah.
It's a thing. Yeah, that
You got to be mindful of the flow
Hold
of
on.
electrons in your cables. One last thing, Mitch. One last thing. I just wanted to mention that another way that you can contribute to the show is by going to patreon.com/The Last Angry DJ. Become a regular coffee supporter, as we like to call it. $2 a month. Patreon.com/The Last Angry DJ.
Does that mean we get that Tuki bird coffee that comes out of their ass?
Yeah, almost nobody's gonna
You
get
just
that.
pull
reference.
the tail, and out comes the coffee beans, pre-cut. Anyhow, Mark, we'll go to you while you're shaking your head. You gonna
Vintage
celebrate Patty's
Nouveau.
Day?
Vintage Nouveau says that she liked seeing the cat. And Brediverse is just in with the last comment, jumper cables because impedance matters. Would make the Last Angry DJ shirt too. So there are votes for a Last Angry DJ t-shirt.
There you go. I'm sure Alex would be a lot more energetic if I attached
I'll have
jumper
to
cables
get
to
on
his
that.
nipples. Yeah, that would work out great, wouldn't it? Is he laughing because he just can't believe I just said that, or he's trying to distance himself from my commentary?
Yeah,
You
there's going
amaze
to be
me.
Bad
an
visual.
HR conference.
Bad visual.
Conference after the show.
Yeah.
All
exactly,
right,
yeah.
folks. Come on and tell us what you think. Tell me to calm down and stop my crazy antics and any subjects you may have. I thought it was a fun subject to talk about because it really is at the heart of what The Last Angry DJ is about, is the transition between what it was like back in my day to Alex's day, and somewhere in the middle is Mark there. So we always get that radio reference. So thank you for that. I want to thank Laura also for helping out with the questions today, and all our many sponsors who you'll see on our credit for now. Next week, we'll be back. Please be safe.